There is a famous moral dilemma on Earth. A man's family is starving. He has no money, and the only way to save them is by stealing bread from a bakery. Is this act wrong? If it is wrong, should he be punished? Or, because it was for his family, can stealing the bread be forgiven? People have long debated this question. Some believe it is wrong, while others believe it is not. What I want to point out is that this is not merely a moral dilemma fabricated in a story. In fact, many families on Earth face hunger every day. This is a real dilemma many people encounter. I believe that most of these people, when faced with starvation, would choose to steal food for their families. So, is this wrong? Should they be punished? The answer is actually simple. This is a tragedy caused by a society that operates based on a monetary system. The real issue behind this moral dilemma is not the act of stealing itself, but the fact that people must rely on money to obtain basic necessities for survival. Today, many countries on Earth consider themselves highly developed. But I would like to ask, in such so-called highly developed countries, why must people still use money to access basic necessities for survival? Even in countries like the United States, why are there still extremely poor individuals who are homeless? Why does basic housing still require money? You might think I'm stating the obvious, that food, housing, and other basic necessities must, of course, cost money. But now I ask you to imagine a society without money. I dare say that you probably can't even truly imagine such a society, because your thinking has already been completely bound by the monetary system of Earth. In fact, societies without money, or more precisely, societies that did not operate based on monetary systems, have existed on Earth. The most recent example in history is ancient Egypt. For most of its long history, ancient Egyptian civilization had no monetary system. It wasn't until the late 6th century BCE to around the 4th century BCE, during periods of foreign rule, Persian and Greek, that the use of money gradually appeared and spread in Egypt. In fact, the decline of ancient Egyptian civilization began about 5,000 years ago. If you want to know why, you can watch this video. You probably also know that during the ancient Egyptian era, Egyptians built magnificent pyramids, established a powerful nation, developed flourishing agriculture and textile production, and achieved scientific and technological advancements far ahead of other regions at the time. Many so-called Egyptologists claim that ancient Egyptians had to work in exchange for food, but this is not true. I can tell you that, at least around 5,000 years ago, Egyptians could access food, housing, clothing, and other life necessities without any form of exchange. It was a society without money, where everything was collectively owned, and collective life was harmonious and beautiful. It wasn't until the clergy in ancient Egypt gradually expanded its power, eventually controlling the pharaoh, that this collectively owned society began to collapse, leading to the decline of ancient Egyptian civilization. Here, I must emphasize, collectivism is not communism, and communism is definitely not the solution. The reason is simple. Communist countries are not part of democratic nations, but are part of authoritarian regimes. Moreover, violence is never the solution, and throughout history, violence has always been the shadow accompanying communism. Now you should understand. In a truly advanced nation, people should not still need money to access basic necessities. Most countries on Earth today consider themselves highly developed, but in reality, they are not. On the contrary, their civilizations are rotten. From their leaders to their so-called elites, the entire system is distorted and deformed. Many people on Earth believe atomic arms to be the major danger, but it is not so. The greatest danger concerns materialism. The people of our planet seek money, To some, it's a means of attaining power. To others, it's a means to acquire drugs, which is another curse. Yet to others, it's a way of possessing more than their neighbors possess. If a businessman owns a large store, he then wants a second, then a third. If he commands a small empire, he wants to increase it. If an ordinary man owns a house in which he could live happily with his family, he wants a larger one, or to own a second one, then a third. Why this folly? Besides, a person will die and have to abandon all he has amassed. Perhaps his children will squander his legacy, and his grandchildren will live in poverty. His whole life will have been preoccupied with purely material concerns, with insufficient time allowed for matters of the spirit. Others with money turn to drugs in their endeavor to procure an artificial paradise, and these people pay more dearly than do the others. Here, to summarize, the problems caused by money cover almost all evils. Money truly is the root of all evil. Unfortunately, as regards money, it is difficult to help constructively on earth, for our whole system is based on it. If Germany needs 5,000 tons of Australian wool, it can't send, in exchange, 300 Mercedes and 50 tractors. Our economic system doesn't work this way. It is, therefore, difficult to improve the system. Then, is there a real solution to the moral dilemma we discussed at the beginning of the video? Is there any way to improve our society? The answer is yes. A good government could solve the problem of people facing hunger. In fact, a good government could also solve the problems of housing and many other issues. So, much could be achieved in regard to politicians and political parties. You are all in the same boat, and there is a useful comparison to be made between a country or planet and a boat. Every boat must have its captain, but to run well it requires skill and a spirit of cooperation among the sailors, as well as their respect for their captain. If, as well as being knowledgeable, experienced, and quick-thinking, the captain is also fair and honest, the chances are great that his crew will do its best by him. It is, ultimately, the intrinsic worth of the captain, regardless of his political or religious leanings, that will determine the effectiveness of his operation. Imagine, for example, that a captain had to be elected by his crew, more for reasons of politics than for his skill in navigation and his cool-handedness in times of danger. To imagine the situation better, let's suppose we are watching an actual election. We are standing on a leading dock where 150 crew members are assembled with 3 candidates for command of a ship. The first is a Democrat, the second, a communist, and the third, a conservative. Among the crew members, there are 60 with communist leanings, 50 Democrats, and 40 conservatives. Now, I am going to show you that this affair cannot be conducted appropriately. The communist candidate is obliged to make certain promises to the Democrats and conservatives if he wants to win, because he is only guaranteed 60 of the votes. He must convince at least 16 men from the other parties that it is in their interests to elect him. But will he be able to keep the promises he makes? And, of course, the same applies to the other 2 candidates. When one or the other of these captains is at sea, he will always find that a significant number of his crew are fundamentally opposed to his having command. So there is always a significant risk of mutiny. Of course, this is not the method by which a captain achieves his command. Fortunately, I merely wish to illustrate the dangers that are inherent in electing leaders on the basis of political bias, rather than for their ability to lead people honestly in appropriate directions. While on the subject, I must emphasize another point. When our captain-elect is at sea, he is the one and only leader of the vessel, whereas, when a party leader is elected as head of state, he is immediately confronted with a leader of the opposition. From the very beginning of his leadership, whether his decisions are good or bad, he will be systematically criticized by an opposing party bent on his demise. How can a country be properly governed under such a system? The only solution is to follow the example of the government of Mu. If you want to know exactly how they form a government, you can watch this video. This is to place as head of state a leader whose unique goal is the well-being of the people, a leader not motivated by false pride or party and personal pecuniary ambition, to do away with political parties, and the resentment, the grudges, the hatred that go with them, and to hold out your hand to your neighbors, to accept them and work with them, regardless of differences you may have. They are, after all, in the same boat with you. They are part of the same village, the same town, the same nation, the same planet. Now, to summarize, there is still much that can be done to improve our society, and the most important changes must happen at the level of government. Although the problems caused by money are extremely difficult to resolve, a truly excellent government could still solve many, many issues. However, as things stand today, the politicians who control governments will never be able or willing to form a truly excellent government.